Welcome and thanks for joining us. My guest today is Juliana Vida, the Group Vice President and Chief Strategy Advisor for Public Sector at Splunk. Juliana, great to be speaking with you.
Likewise, thanks for having me.
Yeah, sure. And of course, there's plenty to get into here. Let's start here. How is DoD's IT transformation, which is pretty broad in scope, ultimately advancing this goal of resilience for its operations going forward?
Sure. So, as with any large enterprise, DoD being arguably the largest one in the world, marching towards a future of total resilience, leveraging IT transformation, is going to be one of those not eating the elephant all at once, but one bite at a time. Now, there's a lot of bites, and the DoD has already started down that path. But in terms of how Splunk looks at it, of course, and many other vendors in our space, is focus on the data, leverage the technology that is already at the fingertips of the department, continue to lean into those technology advancements, because that's what industry can bring to the fight, where DoD owns the policy, the implementation, the workforce transformation, et cetera. But focusing on the data and making incremental changes to keep up with the technology enhancements is really the only way the department is going to get there. Recently, actually, I was at an event where a gentleman who's a senior leader in the DoD talked about, all the technology we have available, automation, which of course is a huge key of continuing to move the department forward. Automation doesn't help if we just automate bad processes that are in place. We don't need that. No one needs to replicate the inefficient manual systems of the past, legacy technology debt of the past. Let's forget all of that and then truly innovate, encourage people in the department to innovate, and then automate that innovation. Because technology in the world is it's changing too fast. And no end state of resilience is going to happen unless the department's just smarter about leveraging the technology and becoming a more modern organization.
All right, well, let's drill down on that data piece of things, because that is key to unlocking a lot of these IT transformation goals. That is a big part of a big mission. That's part of a big enterprise here, because there are so many departments and agencies within the DoD, and getting that data where it needs to be at the right place at the right time can be a little bit of a challenge. So, from your perspective on things, what are some of DoD's biggest barriers to that information and data sharing, and what can folks like Splunk do to reduce those barriers?
Well, those barriers, exist in a lot of places. I always like to start with the people and culture barriers, because the technology is generally not the problem. We could talk about, specific use cases and specific issues, but let's put the technology to the side for a minute and talk about the people and process. I continue to see that it's good that today, more than 5 years ago, or Lord knows, 10 years ago, DoD leaders are out talking with each other. They're sharing with each other, they're sharing with industry, they're sharing with the public what they're doing for enhancing the workforce and providing education opportunities for people, for example. But it's still not fast enough. It's not fast enough to keep up with the rest of the world. I mean, the people want to do work that's meaningful. They go into public service wanting to make a difference. And what I still see there's too much of is it's not easy enough for people to do that. They still have to, use the technology that they use at home or on their laptop or on their smartphone, and then literally leave that in the car or at home and then go to work and use legacy technology. And let's face it, it's not fun for people. It's not a way to attract younger people into the workforce, which has always been a challenge for the government, but is arguably even more so today, with people using the pandemic to think about how they really want to live their lives and how they want to have balance in where they spend their time. So from the people and process standpoint, I think that's the biggest barrier, is the department has got to modernize its thinking about what a workforce looks like. Maybe particularly for the DoD, getting away from everyone must look a certain way or have a certain pedigree, and let's open up some of those non-traditional pathways for people to join the department. So people with disabilities, people that have been left out of educational opportunities. Maybe we start looking at real world experience over credentials or college degrees, for example. And honestly, if the department did one thing, if it were that thing to unlock the potential of the workforce of tomorrow, I think that could get them leaps and bounds ahead of where they are today. And then be able to actually leverage and get value out of the technology that they're investing in. I put my money on that every time.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's always people, process, technology, and it's very seldomly, only a technology problem. And there's other pieces to the puzzle as well. Let's circle back to the automation side of things because, as you said, you don't want to automate bad processes. You want to automate, good processes. Minimize the manual rote work and get people working on the higher order things that they're paid to do in the first place. How can automation kind of keep up with this growing pace of what DoD needs to do? It's going faster, and people just need to keep on top of that workload.
Right. So a couple different things. Automation, I would say it's probably one of those buzzwords that we hear that people say, oh yeah, automation. And a lot of people really don't know what that is or what that means. So I'll start with one, and that's just educating. Educating the workforce on what does that actually mean? Because when you break it down for people and talk about how it can take away the stuff that they don't enjoy doing and give them, open up opportunities for them to do the fun stuff, that might appeal to more people than just saying automation and over and people not knowing what that is. And it's not just for the technology people. It's not just for the cybersecurity analysts who desperately need automation because they're just awash in, cyber alerts all day long. But let's talk about what people call the valley of death and how, it's hard to get work done because projects go into the morass of the acquisition system. Well, how about we educate acquisition professionals and contract specialists and the people that are signing off on the documents to make sure that procurements go forward or investments can be made easily. Let's educate them on what we mean by automation so that their processes of getting the paperwork through the system can be more efficient, can be have less drag, and they feel like they're part of this automation thing too. It's not just automation for the technology people and I'm going to be over here like going ka-chunk, ka-chunk, ka-chunk with paper. Just educating everyone who's involved in from cradle to grave, bringing a capability or a technology to life. So that's like the process part again. And then for the technology piece, automation really just means making stuff go faster. Helping people to do their jobs better, faster, more efficiently. And it has to be spoken by leaders at all levels. And again, not just the IT leaders, not just the CIO, not just the chief technology officer, but the HR folks, the finance people, the recruiting people. And it has to become part of the DNA. And there's really no reason not for people to not buy in when leaders talk about it in the right way. One last example, and that's just wartime. Back when I was a pilot, if I knew that there was a way for me to get through the checklist faster, I would do it. That's automation. If I knew that there was a way for me to sign for an aircraft that didn't require me taking 30 minutes to go through 50 pages of maintenance actions that have happened over the last 30 days, some of which are relevant, some of which are not. If I could do that in like 30 seconds and have, the computer or the AI or whatever make most of those, do most of that reading for me, I would love that. That's automation. So let's talk about it in terms that people can understand, that make their lives easier and their jobs more fun, and boom, we get more automation across the department.
Yeah. A couple of quick follow-ups about that. And as part of the education piece of things, automation is obviously kind of a big bucket, and maybe, it is lost a little bit in the buzziness of automation this, automation that. It seems like there is a pretty broad spectrum of what automation entails. It's the low end, the machine learning, the pretty simple code. You put that on a process, boom, things go a little bit faster. Versus the more swing for the fences, AI, the things that can kind of learn on the fly, do things that are a little more high octane. As part of the education, how do you get people to understand like what the right tool is for the right process?
Well, I can't speak for every tool. I can't speak for every process, but I think it comes down to you got to use analogies and you have to use stories that people can relate to. So whatever their role is, and that's where managers and leaders need to bring some creativity to their game and not do what they've always done. Because you know what they say about that. You do what you've always done, you'll always do what you've always got. So if you want a workforce to start thinking about their job in terms of how can automation help me, then figure out a way to make that real for them. Like I go back to the aviation example. Talk to pilots about how much more time they can spend thinking about the tactics and fighting bad guys and less time paging through documents, and they would love that. Or junior people that if they're doing aircraft maintenance, they're wrench turners. They want to be turning wrenches. They don't want to be reading, pages of documents about how to do daily maintenance on the piece of gear. They want to do the maintenance on the gear. So talk to them about, wouldn't it be cool if you could just show up and look at your iPhone or some mobile device and it just tells you, skip steps 1 through 5 and go right to step 6 and get the job done faster. That's little stories like that, little vignettes, just to get people thinking about their work in the DoD the same way they think about their life in their personal life. We use our smartphones. We don't even think about how easy it is to check our bank balance, as opposed to taking out the checkbook register and checking the online statement and doing the pencil, and that's kind of automation in our personal lives, and we need to drive people to be thinking about that in their work lives.
One other follow-up I had as part of the automation piece of things is just, it seems like feedback from those people on the front lines of fill in the blank process is really key to identifying what can be automated in the first place.
Absolutely. And it always goes back to, if you want to put capabilities in the hands of the warfighter, give them stuff that they need, that they know they can work with. And particularly unfortunately for the DoD, it is a huge behemoth bureaucratic organization. But the time for a large organization to make a decision that actually has implementations on a battlefield, it's too long. The command and control, the organization mechanisms that are in place do not permit users, warfighters, soldiers and sailors and airmen on the tactical edge, do not permit them to use stuff that they need today. It takes too long for a decision at the top to trickle down. And by the time that decision comes, we all know it's too late. And they've already figured a workaround. So if they're not going to get answers from the top of the organization in time, they're just going to say, use the, we used to call it like baling wire and chewing gum. They're probably not doing that, but they're going to work around it because they've got to get their job done. So having them involved in conversations early, the department has to start doing that, or keep doing that, I should say. Some organizations do, but the DoD as a whole just doesn't. I mean, just look at the Pentagon itself. That's where a lot of these big decisions are made, policies are written, budgets are decided. There aren't a whole lot of junior people running around the Pentagon. When I got to the Pentagon as a commander, I was one of the junior people. And my hands weren't on the trigger anymore. There've got to be more earlier in career folks being brought into those decisions around the table, where the budgets are going to be made, where the policy decisions are going to be, like immediately, not 6 months later when the policy is in its 10th draft or whatever. Some organizations do it. More organizations need to do it.
Yeah, just continuing with that general idea here, in terms of that challenge of DoD not always being able to get a fast time to decision on things. We spoke a little bit about the people and the process side of things. Going back to the technology side of things, what can DoD do better to have the data at its fingertips to help it make that faster time to decision?
Right. So in terms of the technology, there are many things, but I think that I hear a lot of talk about partnership with, we got to be better partners. We need industry to partner with us. That industry is waiting for your phone call. They're in many cases, a technology, a Splunk or a whatever other technology, it's already in the environment. The DoD's already bought it. It shocks me every day to know how many of our customers we have to encourage to use the product. We have to show them, use the example of the smartphone again. You bought the smartphone for whatever price it was, and you're only using it to take pictures. Let's help you use it to manage your financial future. Let's help you. You get the point. That is exactly the way a lot of technology is in DoD. So one thing that the department can do is encourage its leadership or decision makers, whoever the ones making decisions about buying or implementing technology, get them to actually have a conversation with their industry partner, because often it's already included, like it's included in the price. So come have a conversation and we can show you how to get more value. There's still just too much us versus them. There's still too much mistrust. And I don't understand it because there are processes in place for industry to prove that we've already gone through the wickets and we already have the security. And once we've proven ourselves, then on the DoD side, that should be an open door to, okay, now let's have a conversation about getting the most value. I don't know how to make that happen any faster than it is today, but that's got to happen. Enough talk about partnership. Let's actually partner. Let's actually have a conversation.
All right. Well, to shift the conversation here a little bit, obviously a huge part of this is going to be, seamless delivery of services, but also security's got to be baked in there as well. And obviously, DoD has spent a considerable amount of time recently getting up to speed with Zero Trust, which is a going concern for all of government here. How far along would you assess DoD in that Zero Trust journey, recognizing the destination is never done? Like, it's always going to be an ongoing process.
Yeah. So they're getting there. Back to the cultural, barriers. I think there's still a lot of talk. Now, fortunately, it's not just with the DoD. It's all across the federal government. There's legislation and executive orders and all of that are kind of putting pressure on all of the departments to move faster, move faster. To your point, it's not an end game. It's an ongoing process that's going to have to evolve. It's a new framework of security, still new to some people, not to security practitioners, because they've been waiting for this forever. So there's progress being made. I think there's just still too much of we'll just build it. DoD will just build it, and we'll kind of pick and choose what technologies we want to throw in there every now and then, as opposed to let's lean into where industry can help us first and let the industry technology kind of get us really further down the field. And then the domain expertise, the patriotic duty, the public servants, all the stuff that's good about the department, that can kind of sprinkle in on top of the technology. It's a complete reversal of how the department has thought about technology partnership in the past. In the past, it's been the DoD will build most of it, and then they kind of sprinkle technology in. It's got to be the other way, because there's too many components of Zero Trust to make it an easy button solution for the DoD to come up to build on their own. So there are pillars of Zero Trust, and there are different technologies that align to the different pillars. So I'm not going to rattle them all off here, but identity management is one of them. Data logging is one of them. Well, you have different vendors within those spaces that have expertise. And so the DoD it would be smarter to just lean into those vendors and have a more holistic approach to let's let technology, build the Zero Trust architecture, like I said. So making progress, I'm not sure at this point, with the end state being, I think it's 2027, is when all the services are supposed to be implementing the Zero Trust strategy. I give the department a C+. And you can ask me again in a year, but it's never going to be fast enough unless there's more of industry and less of DoD.
Yeah, well, obviously an incomplete, given that there's just so much more to be done,
right?
And that there will continue to be more to be done there. To tie it all back to, again, people, process, technology, it does seem that, again, there's a top-down culture of, the memo says this, go do this. It might be helpful to maybe unpack the why of why these things need to get done. And I think change management plays a big role in that, communicating that from leadership to the people who are getting it done. Here's why we need to get it done. Here, why it's important. That seems to be maybe one of the soft skills that gets lost in a lot of this conversation.
It does, and this is one of those things that I scratch my head because I think it should be pretty clear to most people why the department needs to modernize, because the rest of the world and surely our major competitors in a military context, we know who they are, we know the countries they're in, they are not waiting. They are moving out, they are doing bad things to us, they are stealing our IP. They're doing bad things around the world, and that's the why. That it kind of doesn't get much simpler than that. It's, I think, back to making everyone in the department feel like they're part of that solution. That's the problem. If I don't mean to pick on acquisition or finance folks, but I'm just going to use that because they're not IT. That's why I'm picking them. But if they were brought into conferences. There's all these conferences all the time, whether it's vendor hosted or DoD hosted, all across the country. A lot of them are free. You see the same IT people there all the time. Well, how about bring those finance partners along? How about bring the recruiting folks along so that they can hear the importance of why we need to move faster? Why we need to move things smarter, in a smarter way and faster in the department so that there's no drag across the environment. But you usually don't see people that aren't in the office of the CIO or maybe the chief technology officer or the chief data officer. You don't see them out there learning about technology or how they can be part of the solution. And I hate to be a broken record about it, but it's really, technology is so critical to the entire enterprise of DoD. There is really no reason to leave anybody out because they're just gonna keep you from making progress if you don't bring them along and educate them. Plus, you're doing the right thing by educating, let's say, people that are younger or earlier in their career so that they can be productive in the future, in a modern future, whether they stay in the department or not.
Mm-hmm. Well, one key takeaway I'm getting from this whole conversation is that it is a team effort, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's going to be the folks at DoD, it's going to be the folks in industry to, work off each other and get these goals done. To bring it home here, how can that partnership, be more effective? And, again, what can industry do to support DoD in what is a pretty big mission statement going forward here? Mm-hmm.
So I think and I'm a little biased because I'm on the industry side now. However, I don't ever forget, and I try to, I remind my industry partners or my government partners when I do talk to them. It wasn't long ago that I was sitting in that seat. Now, the phrase is, where you sit is where you stand. So if I were on the government side, I might still be saying, well, yeah, but we don't know if we can trust your technology, or yeah, but the price tag's too high, or yeah, but whatever the reason is, there is still too much of that. Like I mentioned, I think industry is bringing a lot to the game. I think there's free training, there's free events, there's hands-on, let us help you. There's webinars, there's proof of concept, there's workshops, there's hackathons, there's all these things that are just there for the taking for the department. And I just wish there was more of an uplift. I see this all the time too, that Splunk will host an event, whatever vendor hosts an event, a lot of people sign up, and then 50% of the people don't come, and they got pulled back to the office. Well, for what? To build another PowerPoint? I mean, it just doesn't make sense that senior leaders aren't encouraging more of their folks to go get this education. Today's junior person is tomorrow's middle management, is the next week's senior executive. So get them in early to get their hands on, to do the fun hackathon and all the cool stuff so that they're not creating drag in the organization later. So you asked what industry can do. We can just keep doing that. And we need more of an uplift from the DoD side. And once they get in, a lot of people, they come to these events, they're like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Where was this all my life? And then they tell their friends and more people come. And that's the way to do it, is to just actually send people to them and encourage participation and continuous education. It's good for everybody.
Yeah, well, half the battle's showing up.
Yep.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground here, but I think unfortunately we're gonna have to leave it there. I'd like to thank today's guest, Juliana Vida, the Group Vice President and Chief Strategy Advisor for Public Sector at Splunk. I'm your moderator, Jory Heckman, and you're listening to Federal News Network. Now let me send you back to the studio for more on the DoD Cloud Exchange.